Agents Podcast.
Are you the real estate agent whose hair is on fire and you have been freaking out because of what is going down in August? And at the time of this recording, you might be listening to this in September, and so that time might have already passed. Or is it business as usual with all of these changes going down with buyers agency agreements and all of the chaos that has effectively been created by the lawsuit that went down last year? Today's guest, as you can probably guess, is just business as usual. And Mike Novak came to me because several badass agents in the industry were talking about one of his talks that he did at a real estate conference, specifically the Wailopo conference. And I saw this chatter in a Facebook Messenger group, and I thought, I got to reach out to him. I got to bring him on because Mike has been crushing it since he got into the industry in 2017. He's going to share his story. But the thing that he told me was that this is just business as usual for us. And frankly, Mike, that really should be the case for everybody. And I think what you're going to talk about and teach today, hopefully, will change the minds or maybe enlighten some people to look at this from a different lens and hopefully have more confidence. So without further ado, welcome to the show, Mike Novak. Glad to have you, man.
Awesome. Thanks for the warm intro, Jeff. Really appreciate that. Excited to be here. Excited to talk about this. This is a passionate topic that I love talking about. So I'm excited just to share with you guys what we've been doing, answer questions, and kind of do a deep dive into this process. I got into real estate back in 2017, like Jeff said. I was previously a real estate developer, builder. We owned some restaurants, all sorts of different things. And then we ended up in real estate sales. And so one of the first things I did, like my first move in real estate, was to recruit my wife. That was, like, in my opinion, the most important thing, is to get her enrolled with me as well. And that was not an easy sell to make, but ultimately she decided to do it. She got her license as well. She had real estate experience as a transaction coordinator going back like 10 years. And her mom's an agent and everything like that. So it's kind of been in our blood. And we just wanted to really go into that business. But we got into this business thinking like, hey, we're never going to build teams. It's going to be the two of us. We're done with employees and headaches and things like that. Because we had 425 employees in our restaurant company. It was kind of a disaster, not like the most fun thing. And so we thought, hey, let's just do this. It's the two of us. We'll see how far we can take it. And we ended up doing 79 transactions together our first year in real estate with no support. And we're like, oh my God, we better get some leverage around us. So we started like adding an administrative assistant. We had a few agents to our team. We started kind of scaling up from there. But that's kind of how we got into real estate. One of the first things I did beyond recruiting my wife, Rachel, into the business was to kind of divide up our business. At that time, Jeff, you probably remember this. There's like a lot of like teams that had like buyer agents and listing agents. Like that's not super popular anymore, but it used to kind of be like segmented within an organization. And so we kind of took that approach. I just asked Rachel, I said, hey, do you want to work with buyers or do you want to work with sellers? Because I'm good either way. And she said, hey, I want to work with sellers. And we had 3 kids as well. So it kind of worked better for her to have a little more predictable schedule. Buyers can be very time consuming to work with. And so just kind of aligned and worked out well. So I jumped like head on into the buyer business. And that's like really what I just focused on. I didn't take listings for 4 years. It was just 100% buyer business. And the first thing that I kind of noticed getting into the buyer side of things is like agents seemed really structured on their listings. Like they gave great listing presentations, articulated their value proposition, were very clear on what they're going to do for the client. They would like have a whole beautiful presentation. They go over in people's houses. They'd even script a lot of it. They would talk about commissions, how they get paid, all of these other things to set expectations. And then they would sign this little thing called a listing agreement, allowing you to work with this person, represent them. Like they'd officially be hired by that person as their agent. But on the buy side, massive contrast. Like basically what I observed coming in as an outsider was that agents were just opening doors. Like, hey, Jeff wants to buy a house. I'm going to go show Jeff a house. And that's how we're going to kick off this process. It just didn't make a ton of sense to me because we had like really no understanding of what we were doing. We had set 0 expectations. It didn't seem like necessarily the best way to do things. Have you noticed that too, Jeff? Like if you kind of go back in real estate time a little bit?
Yeah, and actually I want to digress on multiple topics, but since you asked me, it's actually interesting when talking about the way it's been for the last 10, 15 years, because the thing I'm also reminding people of why buyer's agents even existed in the first place. Because, when this lawsuit happened, people freaked out. And by freak out, I mean their initial reaction was reacting. And so they were reacting by immediately jumping to social to create content that said, this is the list of why buyer's agents are needed, almost as though it was defensive. But I think we forgot why buyer's agents came to be in the first place, which was due to lawsuits back in the 80s, because buyers were getting railroaded by sellers agents because buyer's agents didn't exist. And of course, the seller's agent had one interest in mind, which was the seller, right? And I think if we would have focused more on that message than being very defensive about what we do, which has now evolved into an industry of just arguably too many real estate agents, and which means when you have too many people, you're going to get some bad apples, you're going to get some lazy apples, which becomes a lot of these door openers. And I mean, honestly, I don't know, Mike, the simple answer to your question is yes. I do think that we've had kind of an epidemic of that. But as you're going to share today, like, you're the type of guy that looked at this and said, you have this great process as a listing agent. Why don't you have a process, any process, on the buyer side? And I want to get into that, but I want to stop here for a second, because you just jumped right in. And I like to get personal with people a little bit first. So everybody who's listening to this, who's probably thinking to themselves, all right, let's get right down to brass tacks. Sorry. I'm going to digress for a second, because I want to know something real quick. First of all, what kind of restaurants did you guys?
So it was a casual bar and grill. We kind of stumbled into this in 2008. I was a real estate developer, had lots of just extra money sitting around to invest in things. And I thought, hey, it'd be a lot of fun to own a restaurant. Like, didn't know anything about it. Complete disaster. I mean, like, we ended up buying the restaurant, but then 2008 happened, and like we lost tons of, like, millions of dollars in real estate holdings with the recession that occurred. So at the end of the Great Recession, like, we basically just had this restaurant. That was like the last thing we had still. And so like, okay, well, we still have this one thing. Let's try to go really deep on this one thing and see how far we can take this. And so we took that one location that was doing like $300,000 a year. We took that location above about $1 million a year, and then we started adding more locations. And so by 2011, we had 3 locations. We're doing about 3.5 million a year. And then by 2016, we ended up with 7 locations, and we had like rapidly expand across the Northwest. But in 2016, I'll be super real with you. I've shared this story from stage. It's kind of an emotional story, but in 2016, Washington State passed some very aggressive minimum wage laws. They basically reset minimum wage to $15 an hour. The minimum wage was from $9 an hour, right? And Washington is one of 2 states in the entire country that does not allow tips to be an offset to minimum wage, meaning like, hey, that doesn't even count in the eyes of the state's rules, even though it does in the eyes of the IRS. That's not actually income. That's not a credit. So overnight, I mean, times this problem by 425 people, and we started losing like $50,000-$60,000 a month, right as soon as this went into play. And we thought like, hey, we can just raise prices, people will adjust. It just didn't happen that way. And so the company went out of business in May of 2017.
Wow.
Which it was a really rough day. I mean, like we tried to reorganize the company and hold on to locations that were doing well, get rid of the ones that weren't. And ultimately that ended up not being a viable option. And we were basically just shut down. I think it was like May. Ironically, we were in like survival mode on the real estate side of things, because we were building up that business. And we were so busy with real estate, and we were so compartmentalized into just like pure survival mode with 3 kids. Rachel and I just kept like setting more appointments, selling more houses. We would get a commission check. We would just like literally throw it in a file drawer and move on to the next thing. Like we literally didn't even deposit it. We were just like stockpiling the money, and we had time to go deposit in the bank. I didn't know it till October of 2017, but the first month we broke $100,000 in GCI. Ironically, was the same month we lost those restaurants. It was that month of May. It was crazy.
Wow. So on one light, you're very fortunate. Like, you were building something on that was going to help you get past this, because a lot of people just go all in on something and it crumbles and you're starting over.
Yeah. Yeah. I'm when they passed the law in November of 2016, and I called Rachel as soon as they passed the law. I said, I think this is going to be a huge problem for us, and I think I better get my real estate license now. And I signed up for real estate school like the next day. I just had this like really bad gut feeling this was not going to play out well. And, you fast forward 7-8 years later now, literally hundreds and hundreds of restaurants in the state have closed because it's no longer viable to run a business that way. Like it just doesn't make any sense, you know?
I mean, that's probably a whole nother conversation for another time, and
Yeah.
some interesting choices that the state of Washington is make. Is just like when I go to Seattle, for business, and you just see all the homeless people everywhere, and I guess that's another conversation as well. It doesn't make a whole hell of a lot of sense, but I guess they have their reasons.
Yeah, exactly. But it was a tough year. I mean, but I always tell people like when you because we all go through chaos, right? Like if you're not going through chaos now, it's just a matter of time until you will. And when chaos sets in, you've got two options. You can either feel sorry for yourself, you can stay down, or you can man up, dust yourself off, and get right back into the fight. And we had to do that like right away. And that's
Yeah.
exactly.
That's awesome, dude. That's a fantastic story. I'm glad I asked. And also you had mentioned that you had to convince Rachel to get into the business with you. What was she doing? Was she doing something other than the restaurant business prior to real estate?
She was a stay-at-home mom mostly, but she was doing part-time CrossFit coaching. Like we're both heavy into fitness. And she was doing like kids CrossFit coaching
Oh,
and really
cool.
loved it. And we had to have kind of that hard conversation, like, hey, this is more of like a hobby versus like a real career as far as like what you can make on it. And it's probably better off being a hobby than being your job. And it made a lot of sense, obviously, to go into real estate together.
Did she continue to do that, or is she walked away from all of that? Nice, nice. You guys just do it as a lifestyle now at this point.
100%. Yeah,
Yeah.
for us, like fitness has become foundational pillar into everything else that we do.
Has that always been the case for you guys?
I mean, to lesser extents, like it's kind of become a passion, almost an obsession for us now as we've taken things to a much higher level. But it's always been important to us. When we first met, we met in 2005, we got married in 2008. We were young in our early 20s, we were out drinking and eating whatever. And then like by our mid 20s, we're like, hey, we better get back to our fitness because we're both very athletic in high school and stuff. And we got back to it relatively quickly.
Yeah, and if you're listening to this and you don't know what Mike and his wife look like, they like come right out of a scene from like a muscle magazine or something, and that's a complete compliment, Mike, because I've known you passively for years just because we run in the similar circles, and I feel like and maybe I'm wrong, but I feel like the last 5 years, like you guys, especially you, like you've really bulked up. I mean, you're I wouldn't want to run into you in a dark alley. Let's just put it that way.
Yeah, we've taken it seriously. We both have, fitness, nutrition coaches and stuff, and it's become something that we're really passionate about. We don't do a lot of things, but the things we say yes to, we try to do them at a very deep level. And for us, that's our family, that's travel, as you know,
Yeah.
that's real estate, and that's bodybuilding. Those are like really only the things that we do. Our kids do jujitsu, and that's about it.
That's cool, man. That's cool. Well, and I bring that up only because I always find when I interview successful people that oftentimes, not all of them, but many of them have a different level of in some sort, not always bodybuilding, but in some sort, they tend to have a higher level of fitness, a higher understanding and appreciation for a very good diet, right, and healthy eating. And I don't know what your opinion on that is, and we don't have to spend a ton of time on this, but I think it's important. I think it's important for anybody in any business that tends to correlate to success in your family life, in your personal life, in your relationships, and in your business. What would you say to that?
I think it's a big compound dynamic that occurs. Like when you're eating right, you feel better, you want to work out. When you work out, you're going to have better, mindset. You're going to feel better about things, more optimistic. And you're also going to be fueling your performance. You're not going to be feeling lethargic through the day. You have very consistent energy levels. You're going to be comfortable getting up early. You're going to say no to alcohol and other bad choices. So I think it does compound kind of cascades if you just kind of start small and start just eating right. Most of the people that I know that are really successful, they also prioritize their fitness. Like it's kind of their time where they get to themselves. Rachel and I go early to the gym, go at like 5 a.m. when nobody's up, nobody's calling us. You can throw your phone into do not disturb mode and just like have that time to yourself. It's super important to us.
That's smart. Yeah, that's really smart. I love it. I love it. Well, we'll shift back to the conversation that I derailed us from, but I'm glad I did. It's good to know. Good to get to know you a little bit more on a personal level. But let's go back to when you got into the business in 2017, and we've already mentioned this. So you kind of you sat in this. You looked at what a listing agent was doing. You questioned why don't they have that process. So kind of walk us through what that progression was as you identified this and said, I'm going all in on buyers, but I want to do it better.
Yeah, I mean, I'm a process driven person. Like, we have SOPs in our business for every single thing. Like, if I send you my assistant SOP, it even says like when our holiday lights should be put up on our house, when our dog should be taken to the vet, like everything I like spelled out in like crazy detail. And so I just started kind of trying what I thought would work, and then I continued to pivot and adjust it and enhance it as I played with it. And I started off where I would basically just meet people like a Starbucks. I'd have coffee with them. I would talk about their home buying goals, and then I'd go show my house. Like I kind of like sequence the two together. And that was kind of like the starting point for the buyer consultation. And then pretty soon I was like, you know what? I feel like I need like a little bit more just like structure to this. I need some value that I can consistently bring people. I want just kind of more of like a consistent meeting format, if you will. And that's what kind of led to the birth of our buyer's guide, which we've updated. And I shared it at the Wailopo conference, a few pages from there. But that was like kind of like the transition for us. And then eventually, it ended up where people were just coming to our office now, where we were stacking some of these consultations. I didn't have time to go show a house afterwards. I would send them out with one of my showing partners, which is another conversation. And I would just have them come to my office. I'd do like 1 at 4, 1 at 5, 1 at 6, just back to back to back. You know what I mean? Rapid fire. And boom, now I got 3 new signed buyers. They're out with my showing partners looking at houses, and they're going to be pending on a contract here in the next couple of weeks.
So correct me if I'm wrong, but you put an emphasis on something that very few people do when it comes to buyers, which is now, mandated, right? That's the change that's happened that people are freaking out about. But this, as we mentioned in the very beginning, is your norm. And you built a system, I guess you quickly realized, because my guess is, and this is a question, when you decided to go deeper on this process and make it a process and not just about, hey, let me send you a list of homes for sale, then let's schedule a time to go see them. I'll schedule it, get, access to get inside, et cetera, which is really basically what most agents do. You said, no, we're going to have a consultation first. You're going to come to my office and we're going to sit down just like you would on a listing presentation. At what point in time did you recognize, and was this immediate, that crap, I'm not going to have time to actually go show them homes, and now I need to hire a showing partner, as you mentioned?
By 2019, I had the showing partner model kind of figured out, and I started adding like multiple showing partners. I had 3 at one point. I've got 2 at the moment right now. But like basically once I was selling more than 3 or 4 buyer ends per month, it became definitely a leverage issue where if I didn't have a showing partner, I would be out showing homes. I'd probably have 7 tours on Saturday, like start at 8 o'clock and end at like 7 or 8 o'clock, and that would then stall the consistent building of a pipeline because now I'm not meeting with new buyers. You know what I mean? So it kind of like, hey, sign all these people, then go show them all houses, get them pending, then go start this whole thing over again. And I didn't like that because it's kind of like a roller coaster, like I just wanted to keep top grading my pipeline, keep adding more buyers to it, and then step out of the showing home phase. And also when I looked at the data, in 2021, I helped 80 different buyers go under contract. It's about $41 million worth of business. And I tracked all the data through Sisu. I'm anal about my analytics. And I noticed that took 11.7 homes shown per pending. And in real time, that was like 6 to 8 hours of showing houses. So very time intensive, right? And if I just controlled the buyer consultation, and then if I also coached the client a little bit along the way and then step back in to do the offer negotiating, I could pull my time per closing down to about 3 hours, right? About 45 minutes to the consultation, about an hour of coaching in between that and when they offer, and then actually getting in and doing the offer myself. And I still do the offer myself. Like to me, that's like the surgery. Like the nurse is teeing this all up, they're getting the patient ready. Boom, I'm jumping back in. I'm the guy that's going to hop on the phone. I'm going to coach you through what to offer, how to offer, why to offer it that way. And then I'm going to jump on the phone with the listing agent who I probably know. I'm going to get this deal done for you. You know what I'm saying? Like I jump back in at that. I kind of like booking it. I'm there at the beginning. I'm there when the offer goes in. I show up again at the end.
So your showing partners, their function is just to get in the car and go show homes.
Sort of. I mean, that's a very simplified version of it. They are first and foremost leverage for me. So they will be in the CRM responding to texts, emails as me, to make sure that I don't get behind on that. They also set appointments, like they're in there prospecting for a couple hours a day, typically in the morning. They'll take Zillow leads, they'll take realtor leads, things like that. And then they will take over once the person is signed. And like when I say take over, I don't mean just showing houses, but actually taking on and taking point for all the communication as well. So instead of me calling these clients twice a week or something on listings, the partner has to own that responsibility. So that's kind of the handing the baton. I've signed the person. Now the partner is driving. The partner's going to pull me back in when it's time to put an offer in on this house. And that has worked out very, very well for me. A lot of agents have this kind of limiting belief that the client wants you to show them the house. And I hate to tell you this, but you're just not that important. If you train your partners very well, they're going to like your partners more than you, because most of us are like super high Ds. We don't have a lot of patience. We just want to go show the house, move on to the next home. Showing partners, they've got a servant mindset. They're very patient. They'll take as long as it takes with that person. They'll go show homes all day long if that's what it takes. So it really does actually serve the client at a much higher level when they get access to your showing partners beyond just you as well.
Are you doing personality assessments to find these people?
Oh yeah, we have a 9-step hiring process. Like we're extremely particular about who comes into these positions because there's a salary affixed to these. We don't want to make a bad hire. The partner has a base salary plus they get an override on appointment set and homes shown that the person buys.
Nice. Do you is there are you going off like a disc profile as you're assessing? And
Yeah, I mean, honestly, like a good partner is typically like a good buyer agent personality. So if you're familiar with DISC, like an SI and IS does pretty well there. You don't want a ton of D. They can be somewhat on the C level, but you don't want them overly analytical or they're going to be pick up the phone and connect with people. Like you want them to be connectors. You want them to really thrive in a face-to-face environment, meaning that's where that I kind of comes in,
Yep.
be a servant-minded person.
I love that. I love that. So, as you take it back now, as it relates to what you're doing, you've I feel like you've broken down the showing partner probably because of what I've asked, but now break that down from your perspective, because I think there's probably a lot of agents that might be listening to this that are going to be, I would venture to guess most of them want to be Mike, and they're going to want to maybe either integrate this into their business, maybe level up their buy side process, or become you, so they're not the one getting in the car spending 12 hours on a Saturday showing homes. So, what does that look like from your position?
Like, how did I get there, or what?
Yeah, let's start there. Yeah.
I mean, I did it all. Like I would be the ISA. I would set the appointment. I would go do the consultation. I would then go show them the houses, and then I'd offer on the house for them. And I'd even sit the inspections. It's super time consuming. That's why a lot of agents don't want to work with buyers because it doesn't scale well. If you want to, a lot of people have said like if you want to be a top producer, you got to list, and that there's an air of truth to that, but it's not really the full story because you can do buyers at a very high level. You just have to do it in a way that's got leverage surrounding you, where you're not the person that's doing every single thing. Typically on listings, you don't do everything either. You have like a listing coordinator, you've got some marketing support. You're really just going on the listing appointment, or at least that's what I do. And then my listing coordinator jumps and I come back in, we're about ready to go to the market, and I come back in when we're ready to negotiate an offer as well.
So as you made this shift from doing everything, we're like, walk us through that process, because I think anybody listening to this needs to understand, okay, I am that person that Mike was. I do everything and it's not scalable. I'm limited on how many people I can work with and I'm burnt out. And so where do they start to shift into potentially emulating what you've done?
I think the first thing is the mindset framework of it, like understanding that people don't have to work just with you to have a great buying experience. Like you got to get your mind right. Also, the big breakthrough for me, I was at a client event in 2018. Somebody asked me where my kids go to school. I couldn't answer that question. And I couldn't answer that question because I was working 110 hours a week. That's a problem. Like you've got your priorities massively out of line when you get to that point. And I to be honest with you, I was still in severe PTSD from that huge financial collapse when I lost my restaurant. So I was like, and I still felt like I was in survival mode a year and a half later, and I was still running at this like sprint pace. But it had been, a couple of years that had built up to get to that point, and it just was not sustainable. So, like, it was kind of that breaking point for me. Like, I can't keep working 110 hours a week and build the business I want. And so the question became, like, how do I make the money I want? How do I take care of as many people as possible because I know that people need my help? And then how do I also make time for my family and not just push them aside? And that's where this really came to life. I mentioned, we talked about Eric Hatch off the air a little bit. Eric jumped in as my coach in 2019, and this is a model that Eric had tried and tested on his team, and he identified it very quickly, like, hey, you have to do this and buy back your time. It's super important. Otherwise, you're not going to have a family, you're not going to have a wife, you're going to have a great business, but you're going to be extremely lonely and not happy,
Yeah.
and that transition for me. But as far as like volume goes, like if you're selling 3 or 4 homes a month that are buyer transactions, that's the time to pull the trigger on getting a showing partner. Like even trending 3 sides per month could be that kickoff to it. Like don't wait a calendar year to sell 36 houses. If you do 3 months back to back to back of 3 homes, I think that you have the momentum where you would benefit greatly from adding a partner, and you're going to end up doing a lot more sales. Having a partner is like being able to have the cake and eat it too. You can work less and make more. I mean, it doesn't get any better.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, it's like the articulated a different way. You got to get over yourself. Realize that you aren't the greatest thing since sliced bread, and there are people, and the only way to scale a business is to hire people that are better at the things that you don't need to be spending your time on, because you're better at doing the negotiation, better at being the rainmaker, better at doing the things that you focus on. Now, you mentioned so mindset, number one, I call it get over yourself. Then you also mentioned kind of the cadence or the level that you're at. So if you're trending towards 3 to 4 buy sides per month, if you're doing 3 to 4 buy sides per month, and if you're doing more than that, you're already past it. So if someone's listening to this, okay, got to get the mindset right. I'm already there. I need to make this shift. What happens next?
Start recruiting that position. But I would back up a little bit too. If you're on a team, you already have administrative support, so you can kind of bypass that. But I would not add a showing partner until you've already got a really great administrative assistant that's providing you leverage in other areas like marketing, contracts, things like that. Eric and I have had many debates about this, and him and I actually agree on this one, that this hiring sequence, if you're going to grow as a single agent or if you're going to grow a team, it's to hire an admin first, it's to then hire a showing partner, and then hire another. And you can do a lot of transaction volume if you just progressively hand off more things to those 2 people.
Say that again. Admin assistant first.
And then showing partner, and then a second admin assistant.
And is that how it continues to scale? Admin, showing, admin?
So it'd be like the 4th edition would be an ISA, like where you get a lot of appointment leverage. So my micro team right now, like the Novak team has 22 people in it, but my micro team, which is kind of like a micro organization from a larger organization, it's got me as the agent. I have 2 partners, and I've got an ISA, and I've got an assistant. Like I have a dedicated assistant now that's just for me. That's not just part of the team, And that group of us, we can sell about 100 transactions a year, which translates to about $2 million in GCI in the market. So it makes great financial sense. And it's also a lot better than just adding more buyer agents. We're handing off leads to unqualified agents that don't know how to convert them and things like that.
Yeah. That's awesome. Okay. So once you just share with exactly what you hired that admin assistant for. So when you got to this point, you decided, I'm going to create this process. You hired the admin assistant. What would you say are the primary things you were having the admin assistant do?
The admin took over transaction coordination immediately. Like basically we created our processes to a point where once I got the home under contract, I was out of the picture unless I needed to negotiate an inspection repair, address a low appraisal issue, or talk a client off the ledge. Like we call it the clip conversation. The client's just going ballistic. Agent's got to step back in, reclose the transaction. Those are the 3 situations where I would jump back in. But we hired a fantastic transaction coordinator very early on, and that really became her big job. I mean, she'd managed 15 to 20 pendings at a time for us, and her plate was very full just doing that. She also did listing coordination to start with, and that morphed into 2 different positions because transaction coordination became like its own dedicated position, and listing coordination became its own dedicated position as well.
Interesting. But you had also mentioned marketing. Did this person do that as well?
He did, yeah. Yep.
Wow.
I held on to a lot of our marketing just because I'm a big believer in video and things like that. And some of those things you have to spend some of your personal time on. But as far as like a lot of the behind the scenes stuff, yeah, we'd hand that off to them.
Interesting. Is there anything else that we didn't mention? So TC, listing coordination, marketing.
Those are really the big ones. Operations would be the other one, like kind of like how you run your business, like the financial controls of it. Like we are big sticklers on having accurate financial statements. And so she'll do all of the bookkeeping, make sure that's up to date. She'll run payroll for the team. She'll make sure CSU is dialed in. She'll lead audit things. So like we have a full-time operations controller in-house that just does all of that as well.
So, but it started with one person doing all of this, and now you've since scaled to actually hire specialists for a lot of this stuff.
Yeah, exactly. When you're young and starting out, you're going to have one person kind of wearing all these hats. Like they're going to be your listing coordinator, your transaction coordinator, your operations person, your marketing person. And then eventually that might become two people, right? And maybe listing coordination, transaction coordination is one, and then marketing and ops is another one. And then you start just adding more people as your business scales up.
Yeah. Awesome. So you did this, then at what point did this showing partner come into the first one come into play?
2019, I added one, and then 2 months later, I added another one. I was like, wow, this is awesome. This was like the missing piece. I want another one right away. And
so it allowed you to create, allowed you to create more opportunity, basically.
Yeah, like I mean, my transaction volume just it almost doubled within 6 months. Like it was just a rapid accelerator. I was able to just mostly focus on setting appointments and doing consultations and negotiating deals, and everything else my partners were doing. They were in their messaging, people back and forth, sitting inspections, doing key handoffs, doing the weekly client check-ins, sending listings, showing the houses, like all of these things that are super time consuming.
Yeah. So, I mean, I guess the most obvious question though is how were you making it rain? Were you buying leads? Were you cold calling? Were you calling, focusing on FSBOs, expired, door knocking? What were you doing?
Yeah, I mean, online leads have always been a big thing for us. Like the reason we're able to do 79 deals, Jeff, our first year in real estate, is because we started doing PPC leads. Like we couldn't afford Zillow and Realtor back then. So we just bought the shitty leads, that nobody thinks are good, and we just started converting them. And we got very comfortable with PPC leads. And then we started adding in Realtor and Zillow when we could afford it. We just started scaling those sources up. And then eventually, like the longer you do this, every year your past client sphere business just grows. Like it started off at like 20%, then it was 30%. Now it's like 55% of our business, just because all those buyers become sellers. Your reputation grows within your community and things like that. And now, like I said, about 55-60% is past clients in Sphere. The rest is PPC. It's Lopo, it's Realtor.com, it's Zillow, things like that. I've always been the kind of guy that wants to trade money for time. Like I don't want to go sit in open house for 3 hours. I think door knocking is awesome, but it's not my cup of tea. I think it's very inefficient. Give me a phone and some people to talk to, and I can scale that super fast.
Yeah. Yeah. Or social media also. Also scalable. As far as let me go back to the process here. So once you identified all of this and you hired that all-in-one person, it turned into a showing partner, which turned into 2 showing partners, and then this operational person ended up becoming, specialists. You end up having all these various specialists. Is there any part of that process that you went through, or that you would be advising someone if they wanted to emulate what you're doing? Like what then came next? Or is it just kind of, is really the next, now I got to go find more leads, more deals? Explain kind of what someone can expect once they kind of continue that progression.
I think you got to decide what you want to be. You know what I mean? Do you want to grow a bigger team and then just have like a smaller team within that team that is your personal production? That's what I've done. Like we have a large organization. We have 5 very high producing agents in our team that have been with us for years. And so those people help pay for some of this other administrative support, like the ops person, things like that. So you got to figure out like what kind of model do you want to run. But if you're going to want to scale things up, you're going to have to set more appointments and talk to more people. I mean, this business is very, very simple. We have to be in conversation with as many people as possible. And if we're not doing that, we're not going to progress our business. So your job as the rainmaker is to get in conversation with as many people as possible, whether that's paid, whether that's your sphere, whatever, that is your job. It's to go hunt.
Yeah. Yeah. And as it relates to hunting your sphere of influence, which has become a big part of your, the greater part of your business versus leads, do you have any specific advice or tricks of the trade, or just kind of golden strategies that help create more top of mind awareness, which creates more conversion?
Yeah, the things that have worked well for us, client events. For our client events, we invite our entire sphere as well, totally free. Do 2 to 3 of those per year. Builds massive top of mind awareness. It also gives you a great reason to reach out to your sphere. That has helped a tremendous to a tremendous degree. And then video. I mean, I've shot video since my first day in real estate. I think I've got like 350 YouTube videos up now. I share them on my social media where your sphere can watch them and engage with them, and just starts to kind of establish that, hey, this guy really knows what he's talking about. This is the person I'm going to use when I'm ready to do something. And then going really deep in a couple of communities. So like for me, our kids jiu-jitsu community has been amazing for me for business. Like I went there for a couple of years. My kids have been going for there for 6 years. I still go there to watch their practices, and I've just gotten really ingrained in that community. And so I'm like the go-to agent for, 240 jiu-jitsu guys. Like, and there's always 5 or 6 people a year there that want to buy or sell a house, and just having awareness there. So I've sponsored, some of their events, some of their catered lunches, things like that to give back to that community. But I think going really deep, whether it's like CrossFit, your gym, jujitsu, like find a community that you can really pour yourself into and give back to, and a lot will come out of that for you as well.
Yeah. Churches, really any hobby groups. I love that. And you mentioned 2, you said 1, jujitsu. What was the other one?
Client events were the other one, and then video was the other one.
Okay.
So
No, but I mean, as far as like you said, groups, I thought you were going to go geographical, like a geo farming, which this is kind of a geo farming. It's more of like a niche farming. Was there another group? Like you said, you owned the jiu-jitsu community. Was there another community that
the other one that I definitely own is my gym. Like I know everyone at my gym, everyone knows who I am there, and just being like friendly, like don't be, Sharon, I mean, he always says, don't be a secret agent, right? And that could not be, more accurate. Like make sure you're talking to people, being friendly to people, not just putting your headphones on and lifting weights, but actually like engaging with people and just become part of the community. Like I think if you can pick 1 or 2 places to really pour yourself into, I think you'll get a lot back out of it, whether if it's any of those things. You can pick. The church is a big one too. Like one of the agents on our team, most of his sphere business comes from his church. It's a small church, and he's the go-to guy for the whole church.
Yeah. Do you have any advice for somebody as it relates to that? Because I think a lot of agents fumble that. They come off as commission breath, and although what you mentioned from Sharon is 1,000,000% accurate, I think the approach is where you either die or succeed. And, and like you mentioned, it's my assumption is that it's becoming a friend first, which then leads into the conversation based upon what you do for a living. But do you have any specific advice on how you're approaching that? And because at a gym, it's, or jiu-jitsu practice, you're not just walking, hey, I'm Mike and I want to be your real estate agent. Like,
my golden rule, I don't talk about real estate. You can ask me about it. I'll answer your questions. But I'm there just as your friend and as like a community member. I'm not there to talk about real estate. We're likely going to become friends on social media. You're going to see the content, the video I put up there, of course. But I'm not going to come up to you and just be like, hey, Jeff, let's talk about real estate. Do you know anyone that's buying or selling? To me, that is gross. That's part of real estate that I hate. That is not how we do things. Like I don't call past clients and ask them to refer me people either. I try to take very good care of people, and then naturally and organically they share it with other people.
Yeah, it's the law of reciprocity, right? Do you do any geo farming, geographic specific farming? None. Wow. Really? Wow. That's interesting. That's fascinating. And you guys, your cup is full without having to do that. So that's pretty cool. As far as video, what are you focusing your content around?
Yeah. So it's evolved and changed a lot over the last 7 years. Like, I mean, back in the day, I would literally just have my wife stand there with an iPhone, and I'd have like a whiteboard, and I'd break down all the market data, and I'd just start sending that to my database. I think starting off with like a market report video that you send to your database and your spheres, like a good, easy first step, as long as you're going to do it consistently every month. I've done it for 7 years without ever missing a month. And then taking that and turning it into some short form content where you can share like with reels and stories and things like that. But as we've kind of got more into YouTube, and as we've kind of elevated our game, we start thinking about like what would people want to search for on YouTube, that we maybe could put a video out that would help answer some questions. And so YouTube has started to become a lead source for us. Like we've got multiple deals this year that we've done through YouTube. And we'll, like we just did one that were the top 10 things to do in Snohomish County in the summertime. Like what are the things you'd want to know? Or what are the 3 best school districts in Snohomish County? Like things that people are just going to search for keywords on, and then turn that into long form content, and then having our videographer take that and turn it into little clips and repurpose it in different places, kind of like the Hermosi effect,
Yeah. So my assumption is you guys were doing this on your own. And then once you got to a level that you could afford to hire somebody specifically to specialize in that, that's when you had a videographer or whatever.
Yeah. Do you know Connor Manane?
Yeah.
Connor runs all of our video. He came on like 2-3 months ago and took over. We had like a team of VAs doing this, and it was kind of a nightmare to manage all of them.
Yep.
And came in and cleaned up the whole thing, because we do a lot of videos for agents on the agent attraction side of things, as well as for buyers and sellers. And he was
That's awesome.
Yeah,
that's awesome. That's exactly what It's Your Media does as well. Yeah, we're probably running very parallel, and he and I are. He's awesome. I love that guy. He does great work. He's based out of Southern California, right?
Yeah, I think he's San Diego.
Yeah, I thought so. Okay, one more question. Let's go back to events. You said 2 to 3 a year. You're obviously, for the sake of spacing them, what would you say are your money events? Like, what I assume you've tested various things. What are your best events that you're like, we are going to do this in perpetuity every year forever?
Yeah, the one that we've gotten the most great feedback on, it's our biggest event that we've done in July historically. Like, we will rent out the minor league baseball stadium in Everett, and we will do a movie in the park at night. And it's typically like a baseball themed movie. Like, we did The Sandlot one year, we did Angels in the Outfield another year. And then we'll have like all the concessions, all the drinks, open bar. We'll have lots of stuff there for the kids to do, like bouncy houses, face painter, caricature, all this stuff. And just like mix and mingle for like 3 or 4 hours. And people love that event. It's like, that's an easy one to invite your sphere to as well. And we've had 500-600 people out for it, which is really awesome. So that one I love a lot. We've done a Santa event quite a few times that gets great feedback as well. And then the other one that we launched last year.
Is that like pancakes with Santa? Is it pictures with Santa?
It's pictures with Santa paired with like food and drinks. So like, you can go get your picture with Santa, and then we've got like a whole pancake, buffet setup thing where you can go eat and drink as well, and mimosas and all that stuff, and a hot chocolate bar for the kids. That one goes over super, super well. Last November, we started doing like a VIP event. Like, anyone that had referred us a client in the last 2 years, we rented out a huge suite at the minor league hockey stadium in town. And we had like 100 of our VIP clients there. It was fully catered, totally open bar. And that was really cool, because like, there was a lot of people there that were small business owners. We were able to make a lot of connections and introductions just from people that knew us. And, some of our key sphere influencers were there as well. That was a very, very fun event, because it was small enough. Like, you could actually go around and spend time with every single person, have a short conversation with them. Whereas those mega events, we have 500 or 600 people, everyone wants to talk to you for a minute or two, and you can't get to everybody or have a deep conversation with anyone. And so that VIP event, I think, was probably my favorite.
Would you say that, because I noticed you mentioned minor league on both, and you're in a big market, you've got professional teams, is that really just cost efficiency?
Yeah, I mean, it's just low key, to be honest with you. Like, we're north of Seattle by about an hour, and I don't think most of my clients would drive all the way to Seattle. Going into Seattle kind of sucks. It's a really big commitment. It's a pain in the ass to park. I just try to make it easy. Like, this is right where everyone lives. It's a 15-minute drive for people. The parking is easy, and it's also not that expensive. Like, the event, I think, was $12,000-$13,000, and the lender paid for half of it.
Nice. So it's really more about it's more of a networking event that happens to have a game going on in the background.
Yeah, and with hockey, you get the fights too.
Yeah. Man, you're making me nervous again. Going back to the alley talk. Awesome, dude. This has been a fantastic conversation. Is there anything that I did not ask? Because I feel like we really encompassed a lot of things here. Probably gave a lot of people a lot of ideas, but is there anything that you feel like I got to mention this, or did we pretty much cover everything?
Well, I think we should talk about how to take, like, if you're okay with it, I'd like to talk about how to set a consultation versus just a showing appointment, because that's been like the big sticking point I've seen for a lot of agents, where there's a skill gap. They're really good at just setting up the home tour, but they're not that good at setting up a consultation. So there's a couple of big things that I'm looking at when I'm talking to leads. I'm looking to understand and connect with them on a very personal level. Like, most agents make the mistake of talking about the house very quickly on. Like, they'll be like, "Hey, Jeff, you're looking at 123 Main Street. What'd you like about that house? What are you looking for?" Like, it's super transactional. And I try to cut through that crap and be very different. I'll say like, "Hey, Jeff, I got your request for 123 Main Street. I just want to reach out to you and see if you're thinking about making a move now or in the near future," and get them just talking about what their goals are, why those are their goals, and really understand their motivation. The quicker I can get to motivation with this person, the better off I'm going to connect with them. What I've discovered in real estate is that typically it occurs around life events, death, divorce, having kids, downsizing. Like there's something going on in this person's life that is causing them to want to buy or sell a home. I have to figure out what that life event is and connect with them over that. Sometimes my older clients, they can't do stairs anymore. I have to understand the personal story and that connection. I try to get that as fast as possible. And that's where the connection really comes in. The last thing is just making sure they're qualified to set the appointment with. Like a lot of people just rush to set the appointment because they think they can get there. That's great, but you know, beyond connecting with them personally and understanding their motivation, you have to make sure they're qualified. And the easiest way to make sure they're qualified is to draw payment relevancy from their current living situation to what it would cost to buy a home in your market. When I say payment relevancy, I mean, okay, are you paying $2,000 a month to rent a house right now, but it costs $4,000 a month to have a mortgage in your market? There's not a lot of payment relevancy there. So I want to understand, what's their current living situation? Do they own a home? Are they renting? If they're renting, does that rent payment translate into a monthly payment in my market? If it doesn't, I want to go deeper on that because there could be a big gap there. But if they don't own a home, if they're not renting a home, if they're living on mom's couch, I'm probably not going to set that appointment. I'm going to want to qualify that one out a lot more. But I want to really understand the motivation, the personal connection, and if they're qualified by understanding their current living situation. At that point, I will typically ask what I call the squeeze question. Do you know Robbie T from Hatch Coaching?
Yeah. Mhm.
Okay, Robbie like has ingrained this question in our team for years now. And the squeeze question is what I've called this. And you just say, you know, during the call, you're going to be having this conversation and you're not really sure where the call is going to go. Like, am I going to set an appointment? Am I not going to set an appointment? The easiest way to tee up an appointment is just say something like, hey, Jeff, I know that you're just kind of looking around online at homes. However, I'm wondering if the ideal home came on the market for you in the next 30 days, would you want to go look at that home or would you pass up on that opportunity? And that's kind of an interesting question because when you ask leads when they want to buy a house, they really don't know how to answer that question. They're overwhelmed by that, right? Like they don't know, like when the right home comes on, or maybe they have some life event that's happening that's going to push it way out. If they say yes, I'd go look at that house. Boom, lay up to your appointment, right? If they say no, I wouldn't. You got to have a much deeper conversation. Maybe that becomes a nurture. Maybe you've got to learn more about what's in the way of them actually getting out to go tour homes. But after they say yeah, I'd go take a look at that home, that's where you go into your actual close. I'm not a big like script guy, but there is some language patterns that I found are very helpful for setting a consultation. What I would say is, Jeff, okay, that's awesome that you want to go take a look at that home. The next step in the process would actually be to sit down with me for about 20 to 30 minutes so I can walk you through the home buying process from start to finish, get you up to speed in the market, and identify exactly what we're looking for in your next home. From there, I'll get out there and go find that house for you. House today at 4, tomorrow at 6. So notice I'm not calling it a consultation, Jeff. I'm not calling it a strategy session. That sounds like I'm selling a gym membership. I'm articulating what it is. We don't even have to label it. We're just articulating it what it is. The 3 big things. I'm going to go through the home buying process with you. I'm going to explain to you what's happening in the market right now, and we're going to identify what we're looking for. From there, we'll go find it for you. If you use that framework, you're going to easily set the consultation. Have you ever used a framework like that, Jeff, or heard of something like that?
No, actually, I'm same as you, not a big script guy. Try to take what you can from the Sharons of the world, and integrate them in. But I think it's fascinating. That's why I'm listening intently because I want to hear what you have to say.
Yeah. And then don't be super passive and weak. And don't say like, hey, Jeff, how does that sound? Or would you find value in that? Just ask them, how's today at 4, tomorrow at 6, option A or option B, right? Don't ask them weekly if that's going to be good for them. Just like, boom, 4 o'clock or 6 o'clock, give them 2 options.
You basically, it's like a child. You give them 2 options, 2 options that work for you. You don't let them basically set a wide open, tone that's not going to go anywhere.
Yeah. Well, yeah. Okay. That sounds like it could be okay. Like they're gonna be like, I don't know. Like you got to be like, you got to say this with conviction and confidence. Like you got to believe in your soul. This person's going to get so much value from meeting with you. They'd be insane to not say yes. When you believe that, you're going to come off as very compelling and convincing on the phone. You're going to set that consultation.
Yeah. Yeah. That's powerful, man. And that's probably something, as you mentioned, that it just, I don't even know where we went wrong in the industry. Like at what point in time did we, just shift to where it has become what it has become, which is why so many agents are freaking out. And maybe it's just because of the massive dilution. Maybe it's because of, times during COVID when you basically a client just had to have a pulse and you could sell a home and you could get, be showing someone a home. What is your opinion on that? I mean, where do we go wrong?
I think that agents they don't want to cause friction, and they feel like this is friction. You know what I mean? Like they just want to do what the client wants. And a client, unfortunately, they're not the professional. They haven't done this hundreds of times like we have, right? They're just telling you what they think the process is. And so most buyers think the home buying process is to go start looking at homes. And you and I know that's not really the best way to actually buy a house, right? But if I'm not the professional, if I can't articulate to you in a very clear reason why that's not the best way to buy a home, and then give you a better option and a proven process, I'm not really a professional at that point, right? That's where the professionals really step up.
Yeah. Yeah. I would totally agree. What in summary, what would be, obviously we've covered a lot of bases here today, and it's uh, possibly overwhelming, but also I think validating to an agent to recognize that not only is this shift in our industry not necessarily a bad thing, it's going to be a great thing because it's really where the differentiation occurs. And people like you probably look at this, not only is it just business as usual, it's going to be somewhat of a thinning of the herd, which is only going to create more opportunity for you. And an agent who's looking at this and who's freaked out, that's the agent that is probably going to be gone. They're probably going to struggle. And if you are in that boat, you have an opportunity to shift and learn from people like you. And what would be your kind of parting thoughts on this entire conversation? Because you speak about this, you teach this. What's your
Yeah.
advice to an agent?
I think look at this as a huge opportunity to shift and pivot and up your game. Like you got a really awesome platform now where you have to meet with people before you go show them homes, right? And so get really good at articulating how it's going to be beneficial for them and what your value proposition is to bring them massive value when you do meet with them, and be very, very, very compelling and articulate about it. But I think this is great. Like this is an awesome shift. You don't have the option just running around opening a door now for a random stranger. You have to get good at explaining why a consultation makes sense, and then invest the time of these people up front. It's going to be the best thing in their best interest and your best interest. It's going to align everyone for a much more successful transaction. What I've learned over the years is that if I don't properly set expectations with my buyers, things come up. Like they're going to ask me like, hey, when the inspection comes in, I want that crooked door fixed. And I'm like, okay, well, I should have coached that person better that a home inspection in this market is actually for like really big things like mechanical and structural issues. So I didn't set expectations good. So there's a huge opportunity to set better expectations through the consultation process, and really sitting down and taking the time to identify what this person's looking for, what their goals are, and navigate the process and give them a high level view of what it's going to take to buy a home in your current market.
Yeah. Yeah, I love it. Mike, you mentioned that you share some slides or you share some pieces of what you do. If
Yeah.
somebody wanted to connect with you and obviously maybe learn or just get to know you on a personal level, or even maybe potentially get access to something that you have, are you willing to share that? And what is the best way for someone to get in touch with you?
Yeah, for sure. I mean, I get a lot of DMs, but you can DM me on Facebook or Instagram, and I'll send it over to you. Just make sure you send me your email address as well. I've got slide decks on all the stuff I can share with you. I've got a high note file as well that I can send out, and I'll share my buyer's guide with you guys. You're welcome to rip off and duplicate it. Like I said, I've shared it on multiple stages with thousands of people. I don't have a scarcity mindset about this. You're welcome to take it and make it your own. This has been what's worked really well for us, but what's mine is yours. You're welcome to take it and make your own and run with it.
The industry needs more people like you, man. I mean, this is what makes the industry. It levels it up, it lifts it up, it makes everyone better. Dude, I really appreciate you taking the time to share with our audiences today, and I'm fairly confident you're going to get a few DMs and hopefully change some people's lives, dude. You're a great human being. You're an even better real estate agent. And you could lift some heavy weights. So
And I'm glad that we covered a lot of topics today too. We went all over the place.
yeah, that too. Well, the next time I'm up in Seattle, I'm gonna hit you up, and you can kick my ass in the gym one morning. I'll drag my ass out of bed and go work out with you.
I have a rule: the first workout of with any new person is always a leg day. It's got to be legs. Okay?
Ah, of course. And I'm a runner who doesn't do legs very often because it screws up my runs. So good to know. Good to know. Dude,
Awesome.
I appreciate you, man. It's easy I assume it's easy to find you. Instagram, Facebook, Mike Novak, just nothing goofy.
It's at real Mike Novak.
Real Mike Novak. Awesome. Mike, it's been a pleasure. It's been great chatting with you. And I feel like we need more time. So you know what? We're going to have to do this again sometime.
Absolutely, brother. Sounds good.
Thanks, man.
Lab Coat Agents Podcast.